everyone, and welcome once again to Sean's Horror Corner. I am Sean, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Still seeing the subscriber count go up a little here and there. So to those of you who have subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. Today, super excited to have a new guest on for the first time, the Warden himself, Matt Ritter from Getting Off. Matt, thank you so much for coming on.
How's it going, Sean? It is an honor to be here with the current winner of the latest episode of Trick or Trivia.
No, thank you so much for having me on. That was so much fun. Sarah from the Final Girls podcast kind of introduced us to each other, hooked us up a little bit. And, I was excited because I like horror trivia, but I've always felt like slashers are more my wheelhouse. So when you told me what the categories were going to be, I was like, oh, shit, I don't know if I'm going to be any good or if I'm about to embarrass myself. But yeah, it worked out. I had a couple of stretches of being able to get a few in there and managed to hold on. But it was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, before we get started, Matt and I today are going to be talking about a classic, 1968's Night of the Living Dead, George Romero. But before we get into that, Matt, take a minute to talk about your channel, what you do. And then since this is your first time on my channel, I want to know what got you into horror. Was there a particular movie that started the journey? Was it like an event, that kind of thing? So tell us about yourself a little bit.
All right. We'll start with that question. It's really a weird ride. So my mom really liked old school classic horror movies, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the Halloweens, things like that. And she also really liked scaring me. So my childhood has a lot of sporadic instances. It was my birthday literally yesterday, April 5th on Easter, and we were
happy birthday
there celebrating. Thank you. We were there celebrating, and we were talking about all the things she used to do, and she was having a good laugh about it. But I've told her now I am the way I am because of this. So it started out with her scaring me a lot, and then somewhere around my teen years, it went from me being scared to me being interested. And from then on, it's just been a part of me. It's really Halloween is the franchise for me. It was that the original 1978 Halloween was my mom's favorite. Yeah. It's the one that I saw the most. So eventually that franchise went on to be my favorite. And I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but there was a point in time where Jason and Freddy were the mainstream starlets and Michael Myers was kind of on the back burner before making a resurgence and everyone kind of supporting him, where I was like the lone Michael Myers fan while everyone was like, no, it's Jason kick his ass, blah, blah, blah. So like there was all of that. But it's just been something that, started as my mom. It was something she loved and she liked scaring me. And it was a consistent thing that I then gained an interest in as I got older. And, things change. You're not afraid anymore. You kind of see things in these movies that you didn't see as a child. Like, it baffles me how children are afraid of Children of the Corn because they're the only ones safe in that movie. But you're still scared, even though you're safe. So you don't realize that thing as you're a kid. Then you grow up and you see all of these things. And then that grew into an obsession that led to a house full of memorabilia and 2 arms full of tattoos and a horror podcast called Getting Off, which you also asked me about. Getting Off is a horror podcast. We are live every other week, and it's kind of a variety show. So as I said, Sean was just on with Trick or Trivia 2 weeks ago, or a week from yesterday. Last night we had a recorded interview with Sarah from Final Girls that dropped on our YouTube. Creation World is the banner under which a lot of the podcasts that we produce exist. There was a wrestling podcast that is now defunct, Smackin' a Raw, that I also hosted. And then there's the Creation Conversation where me and my friend Travis, who created Creation World, who I've known since 3rd grade, talk movies, outside of horror movies, video games, pretty much all that nerdish. And we do that every Thursday live, also youtube.com/Creation World. But you can find the Katie Horror Showcase once a month where me and Katie sit down. We talk news and rumors in the horror world. And then I make her watch a movie she's never seen that I consider to be a cult classic or just something that, horror fans have seen, because when this all started a couple years ago, she was new to horror. Like, she was getting it through Reek and I, and that's kind of where all this started. So then I made a list of like, hey, have you seen these movies? No. Okay. We're going to go one by one. We're going to bang them out. We're going to see how you like them and what you think of them.
Yeah.
Then we'll have panel episodes. We'll have trivia episodes. We'll do franchise reviews, and it's an ever rotating thing. So you can go and check out any episode. Really, nothing's really themed. You can drop in whenever, and you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, well, I know I had a blast on your the Trick or Trivia. That was so much fun being on, and yeah, I definitely need to go back. I was gonna check it out today, and today at work was chaotic, but I want to go watch your interview with Sarah, because that'll be great, I'm sure. Yeah, but very definitely go check out Getting Off. Great channel. I appreciate Sarah so much for introducing us, because I've been able to start watching some of your stuff and trying to catch up a little bit here and there. And yeah, it's great. You're doing an amazing job. So it's awesome.
Thanks. I've 9 years podcasting total. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Now, you mentioned it's funny, because my story was a little bit similar to you. My dad was a horror fan, and he used to try to scare me as well. And as a kid, I was terrified of absolutely everything. And then as I hit probably like 11, 12 years old, I started switching from being scared to fascinated, so a very similar story. But do you mind me asking, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but you mentioned something, and it cracks me up when I think about it because of my age. But how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I'm 39. As of yesterday, 39.
Okay. So I'm 54, or will be 54 in a couple of months. And you started, when you were talking about your mom and all that, you said, your mom was a fan of all like the old school classics. And somebody my age, I thought we were about to talk about, Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman and that kind of stuff.
Well, no, I agree. That's actually a good theme for what we're about to talk about, because technically Night of the Living Dead, 60s, it is a classic, right?
Right.
So classics for me are the things that my mom was watching in her prime, not as a child, because she grew up with Svengoolie and, like you said, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, and Frankenstein. And she showed me all of that stuff too. But the stuff that at the time when I was 5, 6, 7 that she was into was the stuff from, her late teens, early 20s, which was, the slasher flicks, late 70s, early 80s, stuff like that. Because I was born in 87. So yeah, you figure she was late teens, early 20s, around those times. So,
right.
And I feel like that's, don't get me wrong, there are people who have been watching horror their entire lives, but I feel like that's when the real love of horror comes in, is that late teens, early 20s period.
Yeah, I think so.
Where you kind of lock in. So for me, the original slashers, because like you, slashers are my favorite. Those are my classics.
Yeah.
Which is
and I agree with you. I think Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, those are classics. I completely agree with you. My introduction started with my dad's sister, my aunt. She was very much into the Universal monsters. And so I saw those as a kid, and they didn't scare me. I was fine with those. I liked watching them, but they didn't scare me. But then my dad would watch Halloween and My Bloody Valentine and stuff like that. It just scared the shit out of me. So I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
So Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a remake from the 90s.
Right.
As I was looking this up, they had the original black and white version. They also had the colorized version. I opted to rewatch it in color, which I think is the first time I've ever rewatched it in color. Or the first time I've seen it in color. I don't think I've ever watched it in color. I've always seen the original black and white.
Right.
It is a classic. I don't necessarily... I respect the classics. I don't necessarily know that I love a lot of the classics.
Sure.
But I do respect the classics for what they've done. And that's why I said this is going to be an interesting conversation, because I know what this movie is. I know what it means to horror. But sitting down and watching it, I've got some opinions on what we watched. That was, I don't know.
Okay. No, I'm excited to hear this. And, I'm curious, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we start going through the plot and that kind of thing. But so I've never watched this movie in color. I knew it was out there. For me, I almost feel like it might take away some things to watch it in color. I almost wonder if this is one that's better in black and white, because I'm just afraid of, I think I saw one time, and maybe I'm thinking of the wrong movie, but I almost feel like you can find the original Psycho in color as well. I might be wrong, but I'm thinking you can. And I
Interesting.
think I saw part of it in color, and it just was not the same. And so I stopped. Now, I might be thinking of something different, so I really feel like it was Psycho. But some things, especially where you get into these older movies from the 60s or even before, I feel like they're better in black and white. Like you
Yeah.
watch them in color and it exposes some problems, I feel like, if you do it that way. So I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. But all right, we will get started with this thing. We'll go over a few things here real quick, and then we'll start walking through plot and stuff like that. But Not a Living Dead, 1968, as we mentioned. Tagline for the film was, "If it doesn't scare you, you're already dead." Brief synopsis. I'm sure anybody watching this has probably already seen, knows what this is about. But a ragtag group barricade themselves in an old Pennsylvania farmhouse to remain safe from a horde of flesh-eating ghouls ravaging the Northeast. Film released October 4th of 1968. Directed, of course, by George A. Romero. Screenplay by John Russo and George Romero. 96-minute runtime. A budget of about $114,000. Box office of $30 million. So huge hit. Just a few members of the cast: Judith O'Dea, Dwayne Jones, Marilyn Eastman, Carl Hardman, Judith Riley, Keith Wayne. We'll stop there. And let me ask you first, Matt, your thoughts on casting characters for this one.
Dwayne Jones was great as Ben. Barbara drove me crazy the entire movie.
Yeah.
And again, as a slasher fan, and I've seen this movie before, but again, I don't revisit it very often. So some of this was a refresher for me. You get introduced to the movie, you meet Barbara, you get they're coming to get you, Barbara. And you're like, okay, so this is setting up our main character. Barbara is our main character. And the entire time, she was insufferable through the entire movie. And it was driving me crazy. And again, you talked about losing some things in black and white. There is a scene where they're in the graveyard and there's like a lightning flash and you see it on her brother's face in color. Looks terrible, looks hokey as shit, looks absolutely awful. I'm sure looked far better in black and white, far less exposed. But there was just, I don't know. She, as the two main characters, and that's the way I look at it, is Ben and Barbara,
I agree.
The two main characters. She was just so hard to care about.
Yeah.
Throughout the film, I
completely agree. Actually,
in shock and or comatose for most of the movie.
Right.
And when she did, she was completely and utterly just frantic and insane and rambling.
Yeah.
And I don't know. She made it hard. I wanted to like her as a character and be like, yeah, like root for your heroes. And I was like, I hope they get her. I would have very quickly into her meeting Ben. I would have been like, if you want to go find your brother, all right, here's the door, go. And I would have locked the door behind her and sent her out. Adios.
No, it's funny you say that, and I appreciate your honesty, because I don't know how many people would admit that, but I have always thought that. And I've seen this movie several times. I did rewatch it a few days ago just to kind of get some notes ready, get ready to talk about this with you. But I've never liked her character. Now, I think the actress does a good job portraying this, but I don't like the character either. Dwayne Jones is great as Ben, and I think everybody else that's in the film, these aren't a lot of polished actors at this point. I mean, in fact, a lot of them were contributing to the budget to try to get through the movie, but they're all fine. I don't think, other than Dwayne Jones, anybody just gives a remarkable performance. And I'm not sure, other than his character of Ben, if there's really anybody that's that likable. They're all have their moments, but she's the
Johnny's
worst.
Obnoxious.
Yeah,
throughout the whole beginning. I literally had a note here that said Johnny got what he deserved, because he was before she got to be like super unlikable. I'm like, all you're doing is picking on her and harassing her, and you're like, oh look, there's one now, and you're like shoving her towards and now you got to fight it off, and now you get, that's on you, like you did that,
right?
Like, and then
no, I agree.
The Coopers.
Yeah.
I wrote hanging with Mr. Cooper. They weren't really hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Right.
Mr. Cooper was the worst. Again.
Yeah.
He argued constantly, was not willing to collaborate, was slapping women, which I know it was 1963, but still, like,
yeah.
putting your hand anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
But he was a bad person. Like that was
Right.
kind of the portrayal, and you cannot. It's hard in film to convey that this is a bad person and then avoid all of the things that show that this is a bad person. You have to kind of go there sometimes. So they had to go there to show us that, he's annoying, but he's also really a piece of shit. I do love that, the whole time he's like, let's go in the cellar. Let's go in the cellar. We have to be in the cellar. It's the only safe place. And then down there is his child, who is the one that ends up being his and his wife's undoing in the cellar where he wanted to be. So,
yeah, I completely agree. As far as cinematography, score, story, anything that stood out to you that you really did enjoy, or not so much?
The score was fine. Cinematography, like I said, in black and white, probably a little bit better in color. It's a little more exposed in color. There's a couple weird edits. There's a scene, I think Ben is outside after they go to get the gas, where the zombies are coming towards him, and there's a cut where there's a certain group of zombies, and then it cuts, and there's like one or two more zombies added to it that weren't there in the previous scene in a quick cut. And I was like, you came out of nowhere. Where did you come from? And then, like I said, the lightning and stuff like that. So, but I also take into account the time. Like, you cannot judge 1963 cinematography on 2026 standards as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or editing and things like that. So for the time, I think it was great. I mean, this was, like we said, it is a classic. It was a damn near revolutionary movie at the time, coming from George Romero. Like, with everything that they did with the zombies that we don't refer to as zombies. One of my favorite things about the movie is cutting to the newscasts and hearing what's going on, and even like the little TV-shaped TV inside my TV. So we know that we're watching TV and we see what's going on. Like, those were fun. So
yeah, I agree. And I'm with you. I think I like the story. We'll get into something here in a moment that I'm glad it went this way, because I think it would have been really odd the other. But I think, again, for the time, 1968, I think the cinematography is really good. There's some editing issues. There are a few things here and there. And again, I don't want to watch this movie in color, because I think it would expose even more of the flaws. But I think for the time, it's pretty good. I think the score is good. I think it's a little unnecessarily loud at times. I mean, I appreciate when the score can do things and add things to the film, and I think this does it, but it's a little much at times, in my opinion. It just blares at you at times, and I don't know that that's completely necessary. But again, 1968, maybe that's the way they had to do it. I mean, things were different back then. So, but overall, I'm good with all that. Let me mention a couple of production notes here real quick, and then we'll get into this plot and start to walk through it, because you mentioned Mr. Cooper, and I agree with everything you said, but there's one thing that I find funny, and we'll get to that as we go through the plot. But the initial budget for the film was $6,000. Filming was stopped multiple times, and Romero would use early footage to go out and persuade other additional investors to add to the funds, to where they finally got to the 114. In the beginning, George Romero and John Russo had a comedy horror film in mind about aliens, and that's what they initially started doing. But they realized they didn't have the budget to create a decent spaceship, and so they abandoned the idea, and that's when Romero came up with the flesh-eating ghouls concept. But the alien thing was kept in there a little bit, just with them talking about radiation and the satellite exploding, and that they wanted to keep some of that. So filming began with the script only completed to the emergence of the Cooper family. Russo then completed the rest of the script while filming. Romero expanded the final pages, but that was not used. It would later be used in the sequels Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. One more thing, I did find this interesting. Much of the dialogue was altered and improvised by the cast. Judith O'Dea stated a couple of things. One, she didn't even actually know if there was a working script, and two, that they would just get together, go over what had to be done, and then do it the way they felt it should be done. I felt that was kind of interesting as well. Knowing that makes me think everybody maybe did a better job than what they actually did. They improvised pretty well, I feel like, for that idea. But we'll get into the plot.
What I love about what you said.
Yeah, go ahead.
You were talking about how they would use early footage to then secure more funding. So
Right.
essentially what I got from that is George Romero kind of started the first OnlyFans. He shot content, then took that content and sold it to make money so that he could then use that money to make more content to then sell to make more money.
Wow, I've never heard. I mean, that's the kind of insight you get from Matt. George Romero started OnlyFans. I don't think I've ever heard that before from anywhere else. So that was a good point. I like that. It makes sense though. That's awesome. All right, we're gonna get into the plot and start walking through this a little bit. We of course open up with the siblings Barbara and Johnny driving to the cemetery to visit their father's grave. Johnny, as Matt mentioned, giving Barbara a hard time through the entire thing. They do see this pale man in a suit slowly walking around. We get the famous line, "They're coming to get you, Barbara," and Johnny kind of shoves her that direction. But then as the man attacks Barbara, Johnny gets in. He ends up saving her, but battling the ghoul, he falls, hits his head on a tombstone, kills him. Barbara gets in the car. She gets attacked a little bit, finally gets the car going, but crashes into a tree. So, I think this is go ahead. You go first.
Oh, sorry. I didn't want
to. No, you're good. No, you're fine.
When he's attacking her in the car, he actually picks up a rock and smashes the window.
Yes.
And that is one thing I loved rewatching this is the intelligence that the zombies still have, because in later zombie films, even like the remakes of Dawn of the Dead and Land of the Dead, things like that.
Right.
You do see things where they kind of show that the zombies are gaining back some intelligence, but you don't ever really see zombies using tools. It's normally a zombie horde that is rushing and using the force of momentum to push and knock things down. They're not picking up sticks. They're not picking up rocks. They're not using rudimentary tools to attack and break things. But we see that in this movie, and it is an aspect of the original Romero zombies that kind of got lost going forward that I kind of wish we would have kept.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I was, if you hadn't mentioned it, I was going to, because I like that fact. I mean, you even see him trying to open the car doors. Like he remembers that's what the handle's supposed to do. And later on in the film, when they're trying to get into the house, we see them trying door handles. And eventually when they do break in, they're using weapons to break some of the windows and things as well. So I like that also. And I feel like we get more of that in like Land of the Dead later on than we do in some of the other films. But I do like that original concept as well, that they, yes, they're not all there, but they do have a memory. They do try to get some things to work. I appreciate that as well. This is such, I feel like a classic scene. It's funny to me. I still feel like it's a good scene. I like the opening to this movie. It's odd to me now going back and watching it, after seeing it several times and all these years later, because I think the things that stand out here from this opening scene is, you don't like either one of these characters. Johnny's a jerk. He's fucking around with his sister and ends up, causing himself to get killed. And even here, while she's not in her, trance and panic and freaked out and that kind of thing, she's still slightly annoying. I don't know. I just found her a little bit annoying. I found Johnny a little bit annoying. And I'm one of these people that, because I love slashers so much, I don't have to always like the characters that the slashers are after. But if there is at least one or two that you do like, that adds to it. It makes it a little bit better if there is somebody else you can root for. Most of the time, we're for Michael. We're for Jason. We want to just see them, kill these people. But if there's a couple of characters that you like, that does help. This movie doesn't give you that in the beginning. Like right off the bat, I'm like, I don't really like her already. So, but yeah.
And there's a point later where she's telling Ben about what happened in the cemetery, and she's like, yeah, we were laughing and having fun. I'm like, no, you were not. You were not enjoying what was going on at all. You were very upset and annoyed. I don't know how you misremembered that.
Yeah, she spends that whole story differently. It's funny you mentioned that, because I don't think I've ever noticed that until this last time I watched it. As I'm sitting there watching it the other night, and I'm like, I don't know what story she's telling, but this is not what I just watched, a few minutes ago. So yeah, that's funny as well. Overall, do you like the opening scene, or is it just kind of mid? And be honest.
I like the opening scene. I have a favorite horror opening scene of all time, and it is in my current favorite horror movie of all time.
You're gonna have to tell me what it is.
I can't compare the two. It's the opening of Evil Dead 2013.
Okay.
Where the
Okay.
first and foremost, as you just posted, it came out on my birthday.
Right.
So I went to theaters to go see that. That opening happens where they capture the girl. She's tied up. You find out that she's possessed. They light her on fire, blow her head off.
Yeah.
All that. I stood up and clapped in the theater. I went back and saw
okay.
that movie again the second night. And over the years, I've rewatched it every year on my birthday. And over time, I have just grown to realize that currently this is just my favorite horror movie.
Sure.
So, overall, but so I can't compare the two from that aspect. This is not an opening scene that makes me stand up and clap. However, it does have the iconic, they're coming to get you. Like that is
right
in horror canon, one of the most iconic lines. You hear that, you know where it's from. It is a thing. So I'm not going to call it mid. I wouldn't call it mid because it is entrenched in horror lore so deeply from that opening line, and that opening line makes the opening scene for this movie. Sure. So I'll give it a yeah. I like it.
Okay, yeah, it's one of those things that it's so it's hard to dislike because it's just so iconic. Like you said, I mean, it's a part of horror history. It's got its place. May not be my favorite. I'm not even going to tell you my favorite because it's so generic. I feel like it's a lot of people's favorite, but
oh no, come on, Sean.
I think the best opening, not just to a horror movie, but the best opening I've ever seen in a movie period is the original Scream. I think that opening is absolutely fantastic.
It's a great opening.
Yeah, and the Evil Dead's got a good one. There's a lot of them I feel like that have good openings, but I just feel like when it comes to that original Scream, that was a masterpiece. So, in my opinion, so yeah, that's just my thoughts. But from there, Barbara flees to this farmhouse. We see one of the corpses outside. We find out the phone's dead. Other corpses are beginning to surround the house. She finds one there on the stairs, and then we get Ben's arrival. Ben fights a couple of these corpses. He ends up killing one there that's in the house. And we just get kind of more here. For the next little bit, it's a lot of the same thing that's going on. More are arriving. Ben's trying to board up, the windows and the doors. He kind of gives his story of how he found out things, and then Barbara tells her memory of what was going on with her and Johnny. I do like here we start, they find this radio and we start getting some of the news. And I'm with you. I 100% like these news parts we get initially on the radio and then a bit later on the TV. We kind of get a glimpse if they're afraid of fire through some of the things that Ben has done. He even lights a chair on fire and throws it out there at one point. He finds a rifle. So we're really just, I feel like here for this next group of scenes that we are getting just kind of an intro to Ben and what he's about and what he's like and dealing with the chemistry or lack thereof between he and Barbara. I think there's some really cool shots here, especially again for 1968. I think some of these corpses look pretty good. There's one scene in particular that I like where I believe Barbara's just looking around and she kind of looks up at the ceiling and we see this blood dripping from the ceiling that I thought looked outstanding. But give me your thoughts here as we've gotten introduced to Ben and what he's trying to do and just everything that's going on. Especially having seen it in color, some of this stuff probably didn't look as good as it did in black and white. But give me your thoughts on what's going on.
Honestly, like I said, there was the editing stuff. There was some special effects that were a little wonky, but for the most part, everything that was going on here was pretty cool. And everything that, at least from what I saw, they lit on fire looked like practically they lit it on fire, so it didn't look wonky or anything like that. I really enjoyed Ben. I love that, especially when this movie was made. We have a black male character as one of our main characters. Because that is not something you're going to see often in 1963. So giving him the development, making him one of the main characters, seeing that he's also not about Barbara's bullshit, but he's also not a cruel, like I said, I might have been like, listen, you go out there.
You got to go. Yeah.
I might have kicked her out. She was driving me crazy, but he didn't. Like, he understood that she was in need and he protected her. He did. I believe he did also slap her once, but
he did once.
The hysterics out of her, which was a thing in the 60s that
apparently
I guess you do. When someone's hysterical, you slap them and get their mind right. But yeah, no, he is fortifying everything. He is kind of we're thankful that Ben shows up, because now we're not stuck following Barbara around, crawling around the house, finding. Do we even know whose house this was?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I don't think we ever do find out. No,
because Barbara stumbles across the house. Ben says he was down at a diner and a bunch of shit happened, and he knew about the house, so he came here. I don't know why this house, out of all the other houses he could have gone to, he picked this one.
Yeah,
because they don't really tell us that. And then the people in the basement who were just ignoring everything going on above them, they all showed up and came to this house too and said, oh yeah, we knew about this house. We stopped here. So what is it about this house that everyone knew? Because there was somebody dead upstairs that they found. So whose house was this, and why were you coming here?
Yeah, we don't get that. We don't get to find that out, but that's a great question. And then you mentioned the people in the basement. So from there is when we do get the introduction to the Cooper family. We also meet Tom and Judy as all this group comes out from the basement, and immediately we start getting the confrontation between Ben and Mr. Cooper, and them arguing over things and safety and what they need to do. We continue to get more and more ghouls arriving outside. Ben wants everybody in the cellar. Harry wants everybody in the cellar. We find out that their daughter Karen is sick. We get the TV, where we start getting some reports on the TV, which I really appreciate, and the fact that they're calling it mass murder, which just cracks me up that that's what the news was calling it to start with. And then they start talking about their cannibalism, and that there's rescue stations around. We get a little bit of the story of a satellite explosion, and that radiation is causing this reanimation with these corpses. We've already talked about what we feel about Mr. Cooper, but bringing this other group now into the situation where Tom and Judy, the Coopers. I know what you think about Mr. Cooper. What do you think about the rest of the cast? Tom, Judy, those.
Mrs. Cooper, once she emerged from the basement later, and I don't feel like her and Barbara had a conversation, but she seemed to know everything that was going on with Barbara, so maybe she was listening from downstairs. I heard it and was just reminding him, hey, I was snooping and this is what's going on.
Right.
Tom's the only other likable character besides Ben, I think.
I can see that a little bit.
Tom pretty much sided with Ben. He's like, no, you know what? He's right. Like, we should reinforce this stuff. We should be up here. Like, if we go in the cellar, there is no escape. We're trapped down there. And he was willing to help Ben with whatever Ben needed. Even going outside to get gas in the truck and do all this. Like, he was down to help. Whereas, obviously, Mr. Cooper just hid in the fucking house. And
I'm with you 100% there. And as you said, they go outside. Ben comes up with this plan to go over to this gas tank that's there. They're going to try to refuel the truck and get away. Ben, Tom, and Judy end up leaving to go do so. But in the process, we have a bit of an issue there where gas gets all over everywhere, and gas gets spilled because Tom has some issues. Things get set on fire. Judy's trapped in the truck. I believe she can't get her seatbelt off or something, and the truck ends up exploding, which kills Tom and Judy. Ben's able to get back to the house, but actually, Mr. Cooper won't let him in, so he kind of has to break his way into the house. They get the door boarded back up, but they get into a fight. And then we get, I think, again, especially considering the time, we've seen other things probably better now, I know. I'm curious how this looked in color. The scene where the zombies, ghouls, are eating Tom and Judy after they've been burned up. What did that look like in color? Did that look, because in black and white, I thought it looked really good for the time, but I wonder what it looked like in color.
It didn't look that bad in color, honestly. And again, it's not what we would see later in zombie movies and things like that, where Savini. It's not going to be Savini, right? But for what it was, and like you said at the time, it was fine. What bothered me was Ben shot the gas pump,
the lock off or whatever.
Yeah. Why are you shooting at a gas pump? Like, you're lucky you didn't explode and everyone didn't die right then and there.
Absolutely.
But the actual, like you said, here are a lot of the effects. Honestly, I don't think we're harmed by the colorized version. they probably did look a little bit better in black and white, but I don't think it was anything where it was like, oh, this is stupid.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I remember the first time I saw this film, and I was still relatively young. I was just starting to like horror a little bit. The first time I saw this film, this would have been the first time I actually saw, zombies eating people. And I remember thinking, damn, this looks rough. Like, this is actually pretty cool. Now going back and seeing it, I'm like, okay, it looks good for the time. We've probably seen a lot better now, but it looks good for the time. Yeah, I think the exact same thing every time I watch this movie. When Ben shoots that lock, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, this, everything could have just been destroyed right then, but okay. And then he seems to get so, and I like Ben, but then he seems to get so frustrated when they start a fire and get their things going on after what he just did. So yeah, I agree. But overall, I think this is a pretty enjoyable scene, because so far everything's been in the house, and we're kind of confined there. Here, getting out and seeing a little bit more go on, and the explosion and the attack, and I still like this scene. Overall, I think it's pretty good.
I also want to know how the zombies know that where they're at. Like, I understand the satellite exploded, the radiation reanimated the corpses, but all of the zombies seem to be flocking towards, and it starts with just one following Barbara, and then a couple more when Ben show up, and then eventually you have this horde of zombies that have descended upon them. But are they communicating in some way, shape, or form? Like, how do they all know to converge on this farmhouse? And probably the best part of the whole scene was watching Ben whoop Mr. Cooper's ass. So
yeah, it was good.
He came in and just beat the shit out of him, and I was like, see that? There we go.
I don't know. That's a good question, man. But maybe just like the people that are alive that all seem to flock to this house, the zombies just do too. There's something about this house. It attracts the living and the dead, I guess, because everybody just goes there for some reason. But yeah, no, that's a good point. We find out next that Karen was actually bitten. We get more news about the radiation. The group's still trying to figure this out, and then the power goes out. Zombies are starting to get in now. Mr. Cooper is able to briefly get Ben's gun when Ben lays it down to try to board up some things, but Ben gets it back from him and shoots Mr. Cooper. He then stumbles into the basement. His wife, I believe, goes back into the basement as well. A few minutes later, and we find that Karen, the daughter, is now eating Mr. Cooper. And then she, again, something different here from zombies. Like, Karen stabs her mom. She's just eating her dad, but she stabs the mom. Barbara sees Johnny outside now with the rest of the corpses. Right as it seems like maybe she's going to start to fight and do something, she sees her brother and ends up losing it again. And she gets dragged out, and we assume gets killed. Ben is able to fight off the little girl and locks himself in the basement, where he then shoots the corpses of Harry and Helen. I want your thoughts here, but I have something here I wanted to mention too. So I just find it a little bit, I think this happens a lot in horror movies, honestly. The irony here of, even though we hate Mr. Cooper, all right, we do not like him at all, and we kind of think he's a piece of shit for ever, just hiding in the basement and not wanting to try to help any. He keeps saying that's where they need to be, is in the basement, while Ben is arguing with me. It's a little bit ironic that, to a certain degree, Mr. Cooper might have been right, because Ben ends up in the basement. Eventually, the corpses did get in, and Ben is in the basement now by himself. There's just a small part of me, when I start thinking about things, I'm like, what would have happened if they would have all just held up in the basement? Would everybody have lived? I mean, would it have been okay? Because even though, again, Mr. Cooper's a piece of shit, maybe he was right just a little bit. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
It's hard to say, because then you also have if Mr. Cooper was more cooperative, would they have been able to board themselves up better to hold off? Eventually he did kind of start helping, but he waited so long to get involved and help.
Right.
And he was more so standing back, criticizing the poor reinforcements instead of actively taking part in helping to reinforce. Like, if you know that this is a bad, shoddy job, do something to fix it, instead of just being like, we need to go down here, we need to do this, we need to do that. Also, if they're all huddled up down there, how many does the daughter get when she wakes up?
That's a good point. Yeah.
We got Mr. Cooper, we got the mom. Now everyone's trapped down there with a zombie.
Right.
I'm assuming Ben brings the gun down, so yeah, he could shoot, but how many does she get before he kills
Yeah.
before she kills whoever's in the basement before they
Right.
finally stop her?
Right. No, that's fair.
So this is considered kind of the first modern zombie movie, where what we now consider zombies to be, because there were other zombie movies before this, but they weren't portrayed in the same way as the pale living dead, so on and so forth. We call ourselves over getting off lore horse. I love lore, and this is the beginning of zombie lore. And we talked a little bit about some of the stuff that's lost, but also you've mentioned a lot of stuff that has carried on and been true to zombie lore as how to defeat them. They're being afraid of fire. They mention going for the headshots.
Right.
Like, if you want to stop them, go for the head. Like that sheriff says it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the lore is built in this movie, and that's why this movie is so significant, because this is the basis for a huge genre that spawned things like The Walking Dead and all these other entities that, just like this movie, don't necessarily call the zombies, but they are zombies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And again, one of the things that I think you're one of the first people that's ever mentioned this. I've talked with my brother and a few other people here and there about this movie here just once in a while, but you're one of the first people that's ever brought up the news broadcast. And I'm like you, I really enjoy that. I enjoy what we get initially on the radio, and then them watching the TV and the things that are getting said, and cutting away to the guy that's talking to the police and the other people that are out there while this is going on. I do like all those scenes at all. I think it adds to the movie very well.
Sean, for better or for worse, because we had a little discussion prior to Trick or Trivia.
Yeah.
I enjoy learning things about horror movies. Like I said, lore horse, right?
Sure.
Nightmare on Elm Street 6. Regardless of how you feel about the ending and all of the things, I really do appreciate the fact that they introduced what exactly happened to Freddy to bring him back to life, to make him, you had the dream demons, and even though the CGI looked absolutely terrible and the 3D was awful and all of those things, there's a really cool lore there that comes out of that I appreciate, which is part of the reason why I like it. So my friend Reek, who works with me, he kind of prefers ambiguity. He likes the original Halloween most because you don't really know what Michael's driving force is. He doesn't need a reason for it. He just wants to see Michael go do Michael things. And I get that there's that. Me, the more information you give me to help build a big picture, a backstory, a lore for this character, the happier I am. So that's why I focus on things like the newscast, because they're telling me it was radiation that came down. This is how you stop the zombies. It's where all of this stuff comes in. So then I go and watch later movies, and I'm like, listen, it all started here. And this is, so are we deviating from it, or are we sticking to what's supposed to happen? And where are we going from here? How are we branching off? That is what interests me about horror. So
no, I completely get that. And I guess I probably find myself somewhere. I've just, recently met you, and I met him briefly there that one time. I almost find myself someplace in the middle. I do appreciate it to a degree. I just don't need it overdone. Like, for example, I'm not a fan, and maybe you are, maybe you're not. I'm not a fan of Rob Zombie's Halloween because it was too much. I don't mind a little bit of backstory. I do agree that the original is great and Michael's scariest when you don't know. But at the same time, I like some things here and there. I like getting a little bit of backstory on some of these killers. I just don't need it overdone. I don't need an hour of backstory. Just give me a little bits and pieces here and there. And that I appreciate.
It all depends. So I actually enjoy Rob Zombie's first Halloween. The second Halloween, H2, absolutely awful. It goes way off the rails. It gets crazy. And that's the thing. Depending on how the lore is delivered and what the lore is, like if it's bad lore, it's bad lore.
Yeah.
Not to get too crazy off Nightmare on Elm or Night of the Living Dead and on to Halloween, but Halloween H2O, they basically introduced the fact that Michael Myers is going after Laurie Strode's son because he is the same age, like he just doesn't like the age 17. And when people turn 17 in his family, he gets really upset and comes back to kill them. He went for Laurie at that age, now her son, and that's the reasoning. And I'm like, I don't like that. That's not good lore.
Gotcha.
Like, for whatever reason, he doesn't like that his nephew is turning 17 and his sister turns 17, so he decides to show back up and kill them. Like, that's not good lore. But so it all depends on how it's delivered and what it adds or takes away from the story for me.
That makes perfect
and Rob
sense.
Zombie did his own thing, and I was fine with him doing his own thing for the first one. It was Devil's Rejects meets Halloween. And I was fine with that for what it was. Like, going into it to see a Rob Zombie movie and his take on it, it was fine because it wasn't a part. It didn't do anything to change the original franchise. That was still there and all that was still there.
Yeah.
Then he did H2 and he had the ghost of Michael Myers' mom with the white horse, and shit got weird. And I was like, you completely lost me. Like, we have gone. Nope, can't do it.
No, I get it 100%. So I'm with you. As we get to the finale now, is everybody's dead but Ben. The next morning, Ben there in the basement, and he hears the posse outside. We get to see this armed posse and kind of see what they're doing and killing some of the ghouls and how they're handling the situation. Ben hears them, so he leaves the cellar. He comes up. He's looking through the window. He sees them, but they also see him and thinks he's one of the ghouls. And so the guy shoots and kills him. And then, they end up throwing Ben's body there on the bonfire with the other corpses. Give me your thoughts on how this movie wraps up. Did the fact that they killed Ben, who had been our main character and we really liked, and it end the way it did it bother you? Did it disappoint you? Take away from the movie? Or just the fact that we got such a bummer ending add to the movie? Like, what are your thoughts on the finale?
I hate that they killed Ben. I really do. I understand why they did it, for what the story they were telling in the movie, everything that happened. I understand the idea behind it, but sure. Ben was the only person in the movie, like I said, outside of Tom for a little bit, that I actually liked. So, like, yes, I'm rooting for Ben to win and survive the night the entire time. And here comes the cavalry.
Yeah.
And I hated seeing him die. I'm like, really? In a sense, part of me was like, this whole movie felt like a waste of time now. I invested myself in this character. I followed him to see him survive the night. Now that he's dead, what did all of the rest of what I just watched kind of mean? Part of me felt that way.
Okay.
The other part of me understood the storytelling aspect of it and how they went about it and why they did what they did, which is fine. It's not the ending that I would have chosen if I was writing it. But again, I'm also not making movies and, starting OnlyFans.
That's true.
What the fuck do I know?
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm a little bit torn on it because overall, I agree with you. Overall, my opinion is, damn, like, I wanted him to live. That sucks that after all of this is what happens. But at the same time, in the last couple of years, I've found myself of the opinion that not all horror has to have a happy ending. So many horror movies, we try to patch everything up and give this, nice, beautiful ending. Sometimes these dark endings like this just seem to add to the movie a little bit. And so even though I agree it's not the direction I would have gone, and I hate to see Ben's character get killed, there's a small part of me that appreciates this a little bit because it just does show you it's dark, and it's like, damn, everything he did and it still wasn't enough, so it's just, there's something about that I appreciate a little bit. And it's been a long time since I've seen that remake from 1990. I remember Tony Todd playing the character, and at some point I think he becomes one of the zombies, and I believe Barbara's still alive at that. I would rather watch this ending than that.
That's fair. Though I do love Tony Todd. Actually, I've met Tony Todd. He is one of the coolest people I've ever met at a convention. Like, one of the was one of the nicest people I've ever met at a convention. But did you mention when Barbara died? Did we talk about Barbara's death?
I briefly mentioned that, right as it seemed like she was maybe going to start to battle a little bit, she sees Johnny, and then she gets thrown back off, and Johnny.
I love that Johnny killed her. Yep.
Yeah, I do
love that
too.
Johnny
I like
killed her.
that as well. I completely
I'm
agree.
glad.
Yeah, I briefly mentioned it, but not in
Yep.
a lot of detail. But I agree with you 100%. I like the fact that it was Johnny that got her as well, and she got pulled out into the horde. I kind of wish we could have seen more there, like what we saw with Tom and Judy. When they were getting attacked and ripped apart. I kind of wish we could have seen that with her there, just because I didn't like that character. I wanted to see more than just. I mean, we know what happened. I kind of wanted to see it.
Yep. Like an arm get ripped off or something.
something, yeah.
Quick.
Yeah. Okay, so we've kind of gone through the plot here a little bit. Anything else you want to talk about or mention before I ask you to try to rate this thing that we might have missed or that stood out to you, likes or dislikes?
I mean, honestly, I feel like we did a really good job covering this movie from top to bottom, as far as
I think so.
Everything that happened, and all of the interesting aspects about it. I don't necessarily know that I looked over my notes here briefly, and I think we covered everything that I really thought we needed to talk about for what this movie is. We've hammered home the significance of this movie, I think, plenty.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, then let me ask you this. So I do a rating scale of 1 to 10. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rank this original Night of the Living Dead?
Okay, so my own personal enjoyment rating, and I say this a lot because if someone asks me what's your favorite horror movie in a franchise, my favorite horror movie isn't always the movie that I think is the best.
Okay.
My love of something, or the way I feel about something, and what I think is the best, or the reverence that I hold for movies, don't necessarily collide. So if I were to rank this on a scale of 1 to 10 for Matt, what Matt likes, I'd probably put it at a 3 or a 4.
Wow. Okay.
If I were to rate this on a significance scale of how much I respect the movie for what it did and what it brought to the table, which is a completely different conversation, it's going to be a 6 or a 7.
Okay.
So there's that.
Okay. All right.
It's not something I personally would go sit down and rewatch every year.
Okay.
Barbara drives me crazy. I don't want to have to relive that over and over and over again. But it is something that I have watched, I've seen. I know the significance of it. I respect a lot of what it did and what it created. So I have a lot of respect for it, but it does not have a lot of rewatchability interest for me. And part of that is also, I'd say, Halloween 1978 is about my cutoff, and movies before that, even the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which you and I can probably talk about after the show or later, because I don't want this to be about everything besides the movie, don't really hit for me.
Okay.
All the earlier stuff doesn't really do it for me.
Okay.
In the way that stuff in the late 70s, early 80s, and then on does. So there is that aspect too. Okay.
And I think that makes perfect sense. And I can see everything you're saying, so I get it completely. For me, this movie's a little higher than that, but I think the older I get, because I'm with you. The first time I saw the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even the first time I saw the original Black Christmas, I was like, they're okay. They just, I mean, I knew what they had done. I knew how much everybody else loved them. I had respect for them, but I just was like, they're fine, whatever. I saw remakes that at the time when I watched especially that the remake with Jessica Biel, I loved that. I'll just be honest. I absolutely loved that movie. And I was of the opinion for the longest time that was better than the original. And I'm embarrassed to say this now, the first time I watched the 2006 Black Christmas, I absolutely loved it. And I'm like, that's better than the original Black Christmas. Like, what were they? This is all so much better. And then
I still have that opinion, so don't feel embarrassed.
That's okay. I know other people that feel that way as well. Now, after being a horror fan for so long, and I'm sure getting older and starting to have a greater appreciation for some of the history that's behind horror, I go back and I watch that original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I get it now. Now I'm like, okay, I get it. I still really like that remake, but this is something different. Like this just has a different feel. The same thing when I watched the 2006 Black Christmas. It's enjoyable. It's more fun. That original's so dark and so creepy. And so I get it more now with these older films than what I used to. But again, I'm in my mid 50s. So this movie has a nostalgia for me that even though I do have a few issues with it here and there, I still really enjoy this movie. I don't watch it every year, but I probably watch it every couple of years. I do get
Mhm.
back to it every couple of years because there's just something about it that every time I watch it, even the things I don't like, I just kind of overlook because I'm like, man, if we wouldn't have got this, we wouldn't have got Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, all these other things, The Walking Dead, which I'm a huge fan. I know a lot of people got sick of The Walking Dead. I love The Walking Dead. Some of these things like that would have never happened if we hadn't have gotten this. And it just gives me so much more of a greater appreciation. So for me, I would probably give Night of the Living Dead a 7.5. I really like this movie. Not one of my all-time favorites. I don't think it's excellent by any means, but I do think it's really good. I would give it a 7.5. And I know there's some people out there that, like you, are probably like, "That's way too high. That's not that good." And then there's other people out there that are like, "Are you kidding me? 7.5? Like this is a classic. This started, that would rank it even higher." But for me,
Mhm.
that's where I go is at a 7.5. And again, I've just developed. Not that I think that you don't have that appreciation. I just think the older I get, the more I appreciate the way some of these older things were done.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's part of why I still enjoy this one as much as I do. Are you a fan of like Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead? Those, do you like those, or are they kind of in that same category for you? Just not really your thing.
Um, the remakes,
Okay.
Dawn of the Dead, and then Land of the Dead, things like that. I enjoy the remakes
Okay.
from the early 2000s,
Yeah.
more so. And again, it's updated visuals and things like that for me
Sure.
that help out with that. And Tom Savini being a part of things also
Absolutely.
helps out a lot.
Yeah.
So there's that, and I I agree with you. Because as I get older, same thing. Like I know there are people who look at the original Halloween, since we've talked so much about it, and
Yeah.
think that it is a boring movie. And I understand what it did, and I love it for everything it did and what it means, and the simplicity behind it, and
Right.
all of the things that it does. So as I've gotten older, I've seen that same shift,
Yeah.
but I'm also still firmly in a spot to where, for me, if I'm going to sit down, I want to enjoy the movie more so than technically analyze it. Which again, we
Yeah.
talked Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The
Right.
reason I like the Jessica Biel 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre over the original is
Mhm.
strictly for the way Leatherface is portrayed.
Yeah.
In
It's
2003,
terrifying.
he is a monster.
Yeah,
In
absolutely. I agree.
1974, he squeals like a pig and is kind of a beaten attack dog for the family, and
Yeah,
not as scary for me as the beast that they brought in 2003. And
completely
that
understand that.
honestly is the love. I have watched the original Black Christmas so many times. I've done it for our podcast. We did a Christmas episode. We watched all of the Black Christmases and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah,
I've done it so many times. I can't get behind that movie. I don't know what it is. I
okay,
love the cast.
right.
Like, it has a fantastic cast.
Yeah,
The ending is so off-putting to me,
okay.
and I don't know why.
No, I get it.
Whereas,
It's
like you
fair.
said, the 2006 one, as weird as it is, because
Yeah,
again, we went from, and it's an important movie, the original, because you talk about women's rights, right?
sure.
And bodily autonomy and things like that. Like it does that, it handles that in a time which again we might need to redo, because now same where it was very important to have those discussions and
Right.
things like that. And I love that it does that. I just wish the ending was a little better. And on the opposite end of it, they're like, hey, we're going to tell you all about Billy Lenz and all of the really weird stuff that's going on with Billy and his mom and his sister daughter.
Yeah,
and
some fucked up things.
And it gets really fucking crazy. So yeah. Like,
I completely get it. And I think, again, we've talked about this, and even with this movie, for me to give this movie a 7.5 is almost, there are a few exceptions here and there. That's almost as high as I can go on a non-slasher, just because I'm such a slasher guy. Even a bad slasher movie, I still have fun with it. So they're probably always going to get higher scores like that. But I totally get what you're saying, and I do, as much as I appreciate some of these classics and some of the things they did. I am still the kind of guy. I've made this statement so many times. I want to have fun when I watch my movies, and that's part of why slashers are so big to me. I mean, movies like I don't know, I'll get in trouble for this one, I'm sure, but there are movies like Longlegs that I know so many people absolutely love. For me, Longlegs was okay. I just didn't have fun watching it, so it was just okay.
I agree.
That was just me.
It was so when we do the Katie Horror Showcases, when Katie watches the movie, we call the segment "Shit Matt Made Katie Watch," and once a year we do a "Shit Katie Made Matt Watch," where she picks a movie. Last year it was Longlegs.
Okay.
She was so excited for me to watch Longlegs. It was what it was. It was.
Yeah, it was fine.
I realize something because I've watched a lot of her movies recently. I don't think I like Micah Monroe, who is the main character in Longlegs.
Yeah.
I felt like she was trying to do a very poor imitation of Clarice Starling that just did not work for me in that. I also really don't like It Follows, and she is the main character in It Follows. And there was another one I watched recently. I don't know what it is about her, but she doesn't work for me in horror.
Yeah.
Whatever. I know a lot, like, people love Twilight and then people hated Twilight because of Kristen Stewart not having any emotion and making the same thing. That's her for me. There's something about her acting or the way she portrays things that just turns me off and makes me uninterested in what I'm watching.
Sure.
It's what I realized. So yeah, no, I'm with you. Longlegs was just
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then I'll go watch Longlegs to me was just okay. I went and watched the Silent Night, Deadly Night remake and absolutely loved it. Came out of the theater like, that was so much fucking fun. I love that movie. So yeah,
I rented that on a whim, thinking because it had the kid from Halloween Ends, so I was already a little apprehensive. But I was like, fuck it, I want something to watch. Let me do something new. It's Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's a remake.
Yeah.
I got to the White Christmas Party and fell in love with that movie. And I was actually messaging Kelly from Final Girls, and I was like, hey, so I'm watching this. She goes, oh, yeah, is it good? I'm like, you need to watch it and tell me when you get to the White Christmas Party. And I think she fell asleep.
Okay.
And then got back to me the next day when she got there. She's like, oh, holy shit. And I'm like, yes, holy shit. Yes. This is awesome.
Yeah, that movie's so much fun. I agree. So yeah, I think we have a lot of similar tastes there. But all right, that will wrap up Night of the Living Dead. I definitely, once we stop recording, I've got something I want to ask you about, Matt. So stick around for a minute when we're done. But thank you again so much for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this with me. Before we get off here, though, take a minute once again to go ahead and plug your channel and talk about any episodes you may have coming up.
If you guys like video versions of podcasts, go to youtube.com/Creation World. You will find everything, not just from Getting Off, but also everything Creation World. So if you're into video games, movies that aren't horror, TV shows, things like that, we have a show called The Creation Conversation where we have those discussions. We discuss different topics. We review trailers and all sorts of things for you. So that's there on top of all of your horror needs. So go check out that. If you're an audio podcast listener, if you're listening to this and you're like, I like to drive and listen, we got you covered there too. The best thing to do is Linktree/Getting Off, and you can find that link and me everywhere on social media at Getting Off. TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, everywhere at Getting Off. Links are there. Easy for you to find. Click on it, go and check us out.
Perfect. Yes, definitely do that. Go check them out. A lot of great stuff on there. So go like, follow, subscribe, do all the things. Trying to think of what I have coming up in a couple of days. I'll be back with my friends Rob and Kaylee from That Horror Couple. We are going to be discussing Friday the 13th, the final chapter. So we'll be talking about that. That'll just be in a couple of days. Next week, Brendan from Our Life in Horror will be back. We'll be talking about Candyman 3, Day of the Dead, I think is the title for that one. I also have episodes coming out next week on The Witch, which will be interesting for me to talk about, and Megan from a couple of years ago, the first one. So that's what's coming up. Be sure and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Follow me on social media, Sean's Horror Corner, everything out there: Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, X, Letterbox. I'm on all of it. So give me a follow. Again, thank everyone so much for watching. Matt, this has been great. Thank you again so much for coming on, sir. And yeah, everyone, I will see you soon.